It was 10:17 at night. I was at my temporary desk, crammed into my childhood bedroom in my parents' house, staring at a project spreadsheet. The launch was in 2 weeks, and my promotion depended on it. My phone buzzed. It was my father. "Richard." I picked up, expecting a question about dinner. His voice was cold. "Hannah, your mother and I have been talking with Ryan. He's agreed to let you off the hook for the Cabo trip." I felt a small, stupid spark of relief. "Oh, great. Dad. Because the project? But you will be paying for the wedding's open bar." He cut me off. "Tiffany's planner needs the $15,000 deposit by Friday." The air left my lungs. "Dad. I told you. I don't have $15,000 for an open bar." "Then you're not just skipping a party," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "You're skipping the wedding. And if you can't support your brother, you're not part of this family anymore. We mean it." The line clicked dead. Have you ever been put in an impossible position by your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. I stared at the black screen of my phone. The silence in my old bedroom was suddenly deafening, broken only by the hum of my laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't even feel that hot, sharp rise of anger I used to get. What I felt was clarity. A cold, perfect, clinical clarity. The kind you get when a complex equation finally simplifies to zero. My father's words, "You're not part of this family anymore," weren't an emotional outburst. They were a contractual negotiation. And I had just been handed the termination clause. I turned back to my laptop, closing the project spreadsheet. This wasn't a family matter anymore. This was business. I opened a new browser tab and logged into my bank. My fingers moved quickly. I navigated to the automatic payments section. There, it was an auto draft to my parents' mortgage company. I'd set it up 3 years ago, when my dad, Richard, had been in a tight spot. It was supposed to be temporary. Just 6 months. It had been 36. I clicked the payment. A box popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" I thought of the $15,000. I thought of my support. My compassion had been a resource they'd overdrafted for the last time. I clicked confirm. Next. I opened my cell phone provider's website. I was the primary account holder on a family plan. My 2 younger sisters, Megan and Zoe, were on it. So were my parents, Richard and Susan. I had been paying the entire bill since I got my first promotion. I went to manage lines. I selected my father's number. I selected my mother's number. I clicked the option, initiate transfer of ownership. I entered my mother's email address as the new designated account holder. The system informed me that as of the next billing cycle, those 2 lines would be separate from my account and responsible for their own bill. I looked at the clock on my laptop. 10:21 p.m. It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes to financially sever a relationship my parents had just verbally detonated. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. I had been the silent investor in their version of family, and my shares had just been declared worthless. So, I balanced the books. You have to understand. That phone call wasn't an isolated event. It was just the final entry in a ledger I had been mentally keeping for 32 years. My whole life. I've been living in a house with 2 different sets of rules. There was the set for my brother, Ryan. And then, there was the set for me. When Ryan, my golden child brother, decided to find himself after dropping out of college, my parents co-signed for a condo down payment so he could have a stable base to explore from. When I graduated with honors, mind you, and a full-time job offer, I was handed a card. Inside was a $500 savings bond that wouldn't mature for another 10 years. When my sisters, Megan and Zoe, needed college tuition, my parents didn't have it, so I paid it. When my dad's truck broke down, I covered the repair. And when the bank was threatening foreclosure 3 years ago, I took on the mortgage. Ryan, meanwhile, has only ever taken. He got the condo. He got the endless support. And he even got a cushy job at his new fiancé's father's company. For years, I told myself it was just old-fashioned favoritism. I told myself I was just the responsible one. But that night, as I stared at the confirmed cancellation notice on my screen, I finally understood. I wasn't the responsible one. I was the scapegoat. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called a narcissistic family system. It's not really a family. It's a rigid structure of assigned roles. My parents, desperate to see themselves as perfect, anointed Ryan as the golden child. He was their extension, their trophy, the one who could do no wrong. He carried all their hopes. But a system like that needs balance. All the disappointment, the failure, the resentment. It has to go somewhere. That's where I came in. I was the scapegoat. I existed to absorb all their problems. If I succeeded, it was downplayed. If I failed, it was proof of my flaws. I was the built-in pressure release valve that kept their perfect little world from exploding. My value wasn't in my love or my success. My value was in my function. I was the family ATM and the family punching bag. And when my father told me I was out of the family for refusing to pay $15,000, he wasn't disowning a daughter. He was just firing an employee who had suddenly refused to do her job. That night wasn't a betrayal. It was just the end of a very, very long contract. This all started 3 weeks ago. And it began with the weapon that would eventually end it. I was back in my hometown in the Pacific Northwest, temporarily staying in that childhood bedroom to oversee the most important project launch of my career. This was my shot at a director-level promotion. And I was laser-focused. My family, however, was only focused on one thing. Ryan's wedding. I finally met his fiancée. Tiffany. She was a lot. She was a caricature of Seattle. New money, dripping in brand names and talking about her lifestyle blog, as if it were a Fortune 500 company. The cultural clash in our modest bungalow was almost comical. The first real crack appeared when Tiffany announced the mandatory bachelorette party. It was a 5-day, all-inclusive trip to Cabo. The cost per person, $5,000. I cornered my mom, Susan, in the kitchen. Mom? I can't go. $5,000 is one thing. But the launch is in 3 weeks. I cannot be in Mexico right now. My mom just wrung her hands. Oh, Hannah, don't be difficult. Tiffany will be so upset. It's not being difficult. It's my job, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I'll take her to a nice dinner. I'll buy them a great gift. But I can't go to Cabo. I politely declined to Tiffany in the family group chat. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Tiffany. I stepped into the backyard to take it. Hey, Tiffany. What's up? Her voice wasn't polite. It was a shriek. What do I mean? What's up? What is this text? You're not coming. I was taken aback. I'm so sorry. Tiffany. But like I said, my project launches. Your project, she spat. You're trying to sabotage my wedding. That's what this is. You've been jealous of Ryan your entire life, and now you're trying to ruin my bachelorette party. I was so stunned I couldn't even speak. I just held the phone away from my ear. You think you're better than us with your little spreadsheets? Don't you? She was screaming now. Completely unhinged. Fine. If you're too broke to come, you at least owe us. Ryan and I talked. If you're going to stiff us on the party, you owe us $15,000 for the open bar to make up for it. I was standing next to the open window of my bedroom, where my laptop was running. I'd just finished a 2-hour Zoom call, and I had been recording it to review my notes. I hadn't hit stop yet. As Tiffany kept screaming about how I was selfish and ungrateful, I leaned into my bedroom, my mind suddenly going from shocked to cold. I saw the recording app on my screen, the little red light blinking. I put the call on speakerphone, holding it near the laptop's microphone. And if you don't pay, I'll make sure everyone in this family knows exactly what a jealous, selfish witch you are. I waited until she finally hung up in a rage. I sat down at my desk. I hit stop on the recorder. A file immediately popped up. I renamed it Tiffany Extortion Audio, and I saved it. I didn't know what I would use it for. I just knew that in my family, you always needed proof. After I cut the financial cords, the backlash was immediate. My phone, which had been silent, began to light up. Not with calls from my parents. They were too proud for that, but with notifications. My mother, Susan, had posted on Facebook a vague, passive-aggressive status about how some children forget who raised them and how sharp the serpent's tooth is. My aunts and uncles, who hadn't spoken to me in months, We're all chiming in with praying for you, and you raised her right. Don't let her get away with this. I was officially the family villain. I was isolated. I moved out of the house and into the corporate apartment my company had offered me weeks ago. I threw myself into my project. Working late. Grateful for the silence. Then, a few days later, a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. Hannah. It's Zoe. I'm using a friend's phone. Can you please meet me? Don't tell Mom or Dad. My heart hammered. I texted her back a location. A coffee shop in the next town over. When I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. My youngest sister, Zoe, who was always so full of life, looked exhausted. She was pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She slid into the booth, and the moment I asked if she was okay, she just shattered. She started sobbing. Right there in the coffee shop. Hannah, you were right, she whispered, pulling at her sleeves. You were right about all of it. It's so much worse than you know. Slowly, she told me everything. After I'd left, Tiffany and my parents had held a family meeting. The wedding was still on, but they needed to cut costs. So, Tiffany had a brilliant idea. She's making us work for her. Zoe cried. Me and Megan? She calls us her unpaid interns for her stupid lifestyle blog. We're not helping with the wedding. Hannah, we're her staff. I just stared. We have to write 5 articles a day, Zoe said, her voice shaking. We manage her social media. We pick up her dry cleaning. We run her errands. She says it's to build our resumes. And Mom and Dad? They think it's great. They say we're paying our dues and showing family loyalty. I felt the cold, methodical anger I'd had that night turn into something hot and toxic. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was exploitation. It was basically servitude. Why don't you just leave? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Zoe, why are you letting them do this? We can't, she whispered, looking around like Tiffany might appear. She told us if we complain, she'll tell Ryan you poisoned us against her. And then Ryan will leave. And it will be our fault. The family broke up. Mom cries every time we even look tired. And that's when I understood. It's a phenomenon called learned helplessness. It's what happens when you're in a bad situation for so long that you stop trying to escape it. Your brain literally rewires itself to believe that resistance is useless. It's not weakness. It's a survival mechanism. It's a cage built of fear and guilt. And my parents and Tiffany were holding the key, reminding them every day that they deserved to be there. My sisters weren't being passive. They were being held hostage. I looked at Zoe, my smart, funny 19-year-old sister, who was now just a shell. The $15,000 demand wasn't the point. This was the criminal act, and this gave me all the justification I would ever need. I left that coffee shop in a state of cold, white-hot rage. My sisters were 19 and 20 years old. They weren't just being guilt-tripped, they were being used. This was no longer just about me, or the $15,000. This was about liberating them. But I felt powerless. What could I do? Call my parents. They were the ones endorsing it. Call the police. Tiffany would just call it a family arrangement. For a week, I was stuck. I worked on my project with a sick, burning feeling in my stomach. Waiting. Then the email arrived. It was from my boss. For your information, final project review, agenda. It was set for the following Tuesday. I scanned the attendee list. My boss. The regional director. And then a name I wasn't expecting. Gregory. The CEO of the entire parent company. Flying in from Seattle to sign off on my launch, personally. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it changed gears. Gregory. As in Gregory. Ryan's boss. As in Tiffany's father. Suddenly, the entire game board shifted. This was no longer a messy family drama. This was a high-stakes corporate liability. This man, the CEO of a company that plastered family values and corporate responsibility all over its branding, had an executive in training my brother, Ryan, and a future family member, Tiffany, who were actively engaged in extorting $15,000 from a senior project manager at his own company. And worse, they were using 2 young women as unpaid personal labor. I went back to my project presentation, I polished every slide. I checked every number. I made sure it was the most flawless piece of work I had ever produced. Then, I created one new slide, at the very end. I titled it, Appendix, Potential HR and Brand Liabilities. And I embedded the audio file. The day of the meeting. The boardroom was tense. I delivered my presentation. I was calm. I was precise. I was professional. I didn't just present the data. I owned it. When I finished, there was a small, respectful silence. Gregory, at the head of the table, nodded. He was impressed. Great work, Hannah, he said, his voice warm. Truly, this is exactly what we've been looking for. As the room relaxed and people started closing their laptops, Gregory made small talk. I'm actually in town for the week, he said to the room. My daughter Tiffany is getting married. She's marrying a great local kid. Ryan. You might know him. He's in our executive program. This was it. The moment. I kept my voice perfectly level. Gregory. Before we finish, I have an ethical obligation to show you something. It's a potential liability I've become aware of. The room tensed again. I clicked to the appendix slide. I clicked the audio file. There was no sound in the boardroom but Tiffany's voice. Screaming. You're too broke to come. You at least owe us. Ryan and I talked. If you're going to stiff us on the party, you owe us $15,000 for the open bar to make up for it. As her voice echoed in the expensive, quiet room, I watched Gregory's face. The color drained from it. He went pale. Then a deep, mottled red. When the recording finished, the silence was absolute. He didn't yell. He didn't look at me. He just quietly said, Come with me. Now. We drove to Ryan's condo in Gregory's black sedan. The silence was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. We walked up to the door, and he opened it without knocking. The scene inside was worse than Zoe had described. Megan was on her hands and knees, literally scrubbing the floor. Zoe was at the dining table. Surrounded by piles of cheap jewelry, she was labeling for Tiffany's blog. And Tiffany herself was on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. God. Megan. You missed a spot. She snapped, not even looking up. Tiffany. Gregory's voice was low. She looked up, and her face went white. Dad! Oh my God! What are you? What's she doing here? Gregory just looked around the room. At my sisters. Frozen. In fear. At the mess. At his daughter. What is this? Tiffany. Seeing her power structure threatened, immediately went on the attack. She's trying to poison you. She's jealous of me and Ryan. Then she gestured to my sisters. They're just helping. It's what family does. Family. Gregory's voice was dangerously soft. You're extorting $15,000 from my employee, and you're using your future sisters-in-law as servants. They're lucky, Tiffany shrieked. They're family. They should be grateful to help. That's it. Gregory snapped. The word was like a crack of thunder. You're cut off. The wedding. The trust. The house. Everything. You're done. Tiffany started to scream. A truly ugly pre-male sound. But as she was winding up, my brother, Ryan, the golden child, finally spoke. He stepped in front of Tiffany, his hands up in a placating gesture. Gregory. Sire. Please. I think this is just a misunderstanding. The girls. They wanted to help. It's for the wedding. Gregory turned his cold CEO gaze on my brother. A misunderstanding. I have an employee. You. Who is complicit in extorting another employee. And you're using your own sisters as unpaid labor. You knew about this. Ryan's face went slick with sweat. He looked from Gregory to me. To his screaming fiancée. He saw his condo. His cushy job. His entire future. Disappearing. And in that moment, and the golden child did what he had always been taught to do. He found someone else to blame. It wasn't me, he yelped, his voice cracking. It wasn't my idea. It was their idea. Ask Richard and Susan. Ask my parents. They're the ones who said Hannah owed us. They're the ones who said we had to get the money from her. Gregory just stared. His disgust absolute. He didn't even bother to respond to Ryan. He looked past him. At me. And at my sisters. who were still frozen by the door. Hannah. Megan. Zoe. Let's go. That night, back in my quiet corporate apartment, my phone rang. It was my mother. Susan. I picked up. I didn't say anything. I was met with a wall of sound. Hysterical screaming. Weeping. How could you? She shrieked. You've ruined him. You've ruined your brother. He lost everything. Tiffany's gone. His job is gone. You've destroyed this family. You've finally done it. I listened. And the strangest thing happened. I felt nothing. No guilt. No anger. No sadness. It was just noise. The sound of a broken system that had finally run out of parts to cannibalize. I know, I said quietly. And I hung up. My thumb hovered over her contact. Richard. Susan. Ryan. I blocked their numbers. One by one. There's this thing we're taught. That family is blood. And that blood is a bond you can never, ever break. That no matter how toxic, how abusive, how cruel they are, you have to hold on. Because they are family. But that's a lie. It's a lie that abusers use to keep their victims in place. Sometimes, the most profound act of love isn't holding on. It's letting go. Severing the tie isn't an act of hatred. It's an act of profound self-respect. It's not a rejection of family. It's a rejection of a dynamic that was killing you. It's the final, brave, painful, and necessary choice to choose yourself. It's not a failure. It's a graduation. 6 months went by. My project was a massive success. I got the promotion. I was a director now. With my own team. In my own apartment. Back in the city. Far from that fading coastal town. One rainy Tuesday night. There was a knock on my door. I opened it. Standing in the hallway. Soaked from the rain. Were Megan and Zoe. They were each holding a single, overstuffed suitcase. They looked terrified. And they looked free. Hey. Hannah. Zoe whispered. Her voice shaky. We finally left. Can we stay? Just for a little while? I didn't answer. I just smiled. And I held the door open wide. The final scene of my old life wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was this. The three of us. Sitting around my small dinner table. Eating pizza out of a box. Laughing. Finally. And for the first time. A real family.